A 10-year-old girl stood alone in the middle of a courtroom, gripping a folded piece of paper so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Across from her, the judge adjusted the inhaler beside his bench and sighed. "You have 1 minute," he said. 1 minute before security removes you." The little girl swallowed hard. "Then please listen carefully," she said. She looked straight into his eyes. "If you free my daddy today, I'll make you breathe again." For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Then someone laughed. Another joined in. Within seconds, the courtroom erupted. The judge shook his head with a tired smile. "Little girl, do you even understand where you are?" She waited until every laugh had faded. Then she unfolded the paper in her hands. "You think I'm here to save my father?" She slowly shook her head. "I'm here to expose the one person nobody suspects." The smile disappeared from one face in the courtroom, and the little girl noticed. Nobody in that room knew it yet, but in the next hour, everything they thought they understood about justice, about guilt, and about this judge was about to fall apart. Her name was Isabelle Albright, and she was 10 years old. Her father, Lucas Albright, sat at the defense table with his wrists cuffed in front of him, staring at his daughter with a mixture of love and terror. He had spent 3 months in a holding cell awaiting this sentencing. 3 months of protesting his innocence to a system that had already made its mind. "Isabelle, my daughter, don't do this," he whispered. "Please, don't expose yourself like this for my sake." But Isabelle didn't sit down. The judge's name was Harrison Cross, 19 years on the bench, a reputation for fair but exhausted, the kind of man who had stopped expecting the world to surprise him. Beside his gavel sat a small inhaler, the same one he'd used twice already that morning. Nobody in the courtroom asked why a 51-year-old judge needed it so often. Nobody except Isabelle. "How dare you?" the prosecutor snapped, rising from his seat. "This is a court of law, Your Honor, not a circus." His name was Andrew Vale, sharp suit, sharper voice, the kind of prosecutor who had never lost a case he truly wanted to win. "Your Honor, I ask that this interruption be removed from the courtroom," Vale continued. "We are in the sentencing phase. We cannot allow a child's theatrics to delay the proceedings." Judge Cross studied Isabelle for a long moment. A faint wheeze escaped him as he drew air, though he tried to hide it behind a cough. "You have 60 seconds, he said, finally. 60 seconds to convince me why I shouldn't have security escort you out and finalize this sentence right now. "I'm not leaving until you listen," Isabelle said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "My father didn't steal anything. Someone set him up, and you know it. Deep down, you know something about this case doesn't add up." "This is absurd, Your Honor," Vale said. "This child is disrupting an entire legal process based on nothing." Judge Cross raised a hand, silencing him. "Explain yourself, quickly." Isabelle took a breath.
"On the night they say my father stole money from Victory Corporation, he was with me, at the hospital. I had a medical emergency and the doctors had to admit me right away. He stayed by my side the entire night. He never left. There are records, there are cameras, there are nurses who saw him there." A murmur rippled through the gallery. The defense attorney, a tired-looking woman named Diane Lane, rose slowly to her feet as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "Your Honor, this is new information," she said. "If my client was physically present at a hospital during the hours these transactions occurred, then he could not have carried them out himself." "Objection," Vale barked. "This is a baseless claim, clearly designed to manipulate the court through a child's testimony." "What hospital?" Judge Cross asked, ignoring him. "Isabelle Medical Center, Pediatric Wing, room 4208, early morning hours. He held my hand the entire night. He sang to me so I wouldn't be scared. The nurses even said they'd never seen a father so devoted." Judge Cross sat with this for a long moment. His hand drifted toward the inhaler on his desk, an old habit, but he stopped himself halfway there, as though something about the moment demanded he not reach for it. He drew a breath instead, shallow, effortful, and let it out slowly. "Prosecutor Vale," he said, "did you verify the defendant's whereabouts on the night in question?" "Your Honor, the transactions were made using the defendant's login credentials," Vale said. "Physical presence at the office was not required. He could have accessed the system remotely." "But if he was at the hospital," Diane Lane countered, "then who was sitting at his desk? The system logs show physical access to my client's workstation. Someone was there. Someone used his computer while he was somewhere else entirely." The courtroom fell into an uneasy hush. "This court enters recess," Judge Cross said, striking his gavel. "I want every record from Hope Medical Center on my desk within the hour. Prosecutor Vale, I suggest your evidence holds up, because if there is a hospital record confirming this alibi, this case is far from finished." "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Vale said. "We are already in sentencing. Reopening the evidentiary phase at this stage is exactly what I intend to do if I believe there was a failure in this investigation," Judge Cross said, cutting him off. "Bailiff, take the girl to a private room. Bring her water. No child humiliates herself in my courtroom while I have breath left to stop it." He paused after he said it, as though the phrase had caught him off guard. Outside the courtroom, in a narrow hallway lit by fluorescent light, two men stood close together, voices low. "If that girl keeps talking, we're finished," one of them muttered. "All of us. Then we make sure she stops talking, permanently if it comes to that." Neither of them noticed the bailiff standing just around the corner, listening. Inside the private waiting room, Isabelle sat with a cup of water she hadn't touched. Diane Lane crouched in front of her. "Isabelle," she said gently, "is everything you told the judge true? All of it?" "Every word. My father was with me the whole night. I remember because he never once let go of my hand. Even when I fell asleep, I felt him still holding it when I woke up." Diane studied her for a moment. There was something unshakable in the girl's certainty, something that made even a seasoned defense attorney feel like she was in the presence of someone far older than 10. "Someone deliberately buried this alibi," Diane said quietly, almost to herself. "Someone wanted your father convicted no matter what the truth was." An hour later, court reconvened. Judge Cross sat higher in his chair than before, a folder in front of him that hadn't been there earlier. "Bring in Nurse Martha Oliver," he said. A woman in scrubs entered, clearly pulled straight from a shift, still wearing her hospital badge. "Miss Oliver," Judge Cross said, "did you work at Hope Medical Center on the night of March the 14th? "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "I was on duty in the pediatric wing." "Do you recall a man named Lucas Albright?" "I remember him very well," she said, and something in her voice softened. "He stayed the entire night at his daughter's bedside. She was in terrible pain, and he never once stepped away. He even sang to her so she could sleep. It's one of the most touching things I've seen in my career." "Did he leave the hospital at any point that night?" Judge Cross asked. "No, sir," she said. "I checked personally. He didn't even leave to eat. He asked for water once and stayed exactly where he was the entire time." Judge Cross exhaled, and this time there was no wheeze in it. He looked down at the folder, then back up at the courtroom. "And why were you not called to testify before now?" he asked. "I was interviewed by the police shortly after the arrest," Nurse Oliver said. "I told them everything I just told you. After that, I was never contacted again. I assumed my statement wasn't considered relevant." Diane Lane rose slowly. "Your Honor, I formally request a full review of this case," she said. "There is clear evidence my client was the victim of deliberate misconduct and that critical information was withheld from this court." "Request granted," Judge Cross said. "This trial is suspended pending a new investigation. Mr. Albright, you are released under house arrest until further findings are complete. Remove his handcuffs." The sound of metal unlocking echoed through the courtroom. "Daddy!" Isabelle whispered, and then she was running, and Lucas Albright was on his feet catching her, both of them holding on as though letting go might undo everything that had just happened. "You did it, my little one," he said, his voice breaking. "You saved your father." But even as the courtroom celebrated, Judge Cross sat still at his bench, staring at the inhaler he hadn't touched in almost 20 minutes. He flexed his fingers slightly, testing something, though he couldn't have said exactly what. That evening, in an office lit only by the glow of a desk lamp, two men who had not been in the courtroom that day spoke over a secure phone line. "You said this was a closed case, Andrew," one voice snapped. "You guaranteed there would be no complications." "I didn't know about the hospital alibi," Vale said, his composure cracking for the first time. "Someone in the investigation kept that from me, too." "I don't care about your excuses," the voice on the other end said. "We have too much at stake. If Lucas Albright starts asking questions, if he hires investigators of his own, the whole arrangement could come apart." "Then what do you want me to do?" Vale asked, and for the first time there was real fear in his voice. "Find a way to discredit the witness," the voice said. "Or, better yet, find someone else to blame. But fix this, Andrew, because if you fall, you are not falling alone." The line went dead. Vale sat alone in the dark for a long moment, his reflection faint in the window glass, before a knock at his door made him flinch. "Come in," he said, straightening his jacket. An internal affairs investigator stepped inside, folder in hand. "Prosecutor Vale," she said, "I need to speak with you about some irregularities we've detected in the Albright case." "Irregularities?" he repeated, his voice tight. "Yes," she said. "Judge Cross ordered a full audit of all documents submitted by the prosecution. We found something concerning." "Where did you get this?" Vale demanded, staring at a printed page she'd placed on his desk. "Court system backups," she said. "Everything that passes through our servers gets archived, including correspondence." Vale's jaw tightened. "I'll need you to come with me and give a statement," she said. "It's better if you cooperate now." He didn't move for a moment. Then, quietly, he stood, grabbed his coat, and followed her out, his footsteps the only sound in the empty hallway. Meanwhile, at the Albright home, Lucas sat across from his daughter at the kitchen table for the first time in 3 months as a free man. He hadn't stopped watching her, as if he were afraid she might disappear if he blinked. "How did you know?" he asked quietly, about the judge, about his breathing. Isabelle looked down at her hands. "I didn't know. Not really," she admitted. "I just noticed it. Every time he got upset, or every time he had to think hard about something difficult, his breathing got worse. I thought maybe if he did something hard, something right, even though it scared him, maybe it would get better. I don't know why I said it the way I did. It just felt true when I said it." Lucas reached across the table and took her hand, exactly the way he had at the hospital, tight, unwilling to let go. "You didn't just save me today," he said. "You did something to that man. I saw his face when you said it. He looked like he'd been struck." That night, Judge Cross sat alone in his study at home, an untouched glass of water beside him, and the inhaler resting on the table, unused for almost 6 hours, longer than it had gone unused in over a year. He kept waiting for the tightness in his chest to return. It didn't. He thought about the words that had come out of a 10-year-old in his courtroom, the audacity of them, the strange certainty.
He thought about the years since the accident that had taken the strength from his legs, and though his legs were not the issue this time, something about the memory of that helplessness rose up in him now, tangled with his lungs, with his breath, with everything he had quietly given up hoping might change. He was still awake at 2 a.m. when his phone rang. "Judge Cross?" a voice said. "It's Diane Lane. I'm sorry to call so late, but I think we have a serious problem. Andrew Vale has disappeared." "What do you mean, disappeared?" Cross said, sitting upright. "He didn't return home tonight," Lane said. "His apartment is empty. He isn't answering calls, and Internal Affairs found something in his office. At least 15 cases in the last 5 years, all following the exact same pattern. A competent employee discovers something they shouldn't have, asks the wrong question, and within weeks they're accused of a crime they didn't commit." Cross was silent for a long moment, the phone pressed to his ear, his breathing, for once, completely even. "Bring me everything you have first thing in the morning," he said finally. "And Diane, have someone keep an eye on the Albright family tonight. If Vale disappeared because he knew too much, I don't want to find out the hard way that someone else knows exactly where that little girl lives." He hung up and sat alone in the dim light of his study, staring at the inhaler on the table as though it were a stranger's object left behind by someone he used to be. Outside, 3 blocks away, a black car sat parked beneath a broken street lamp, its engine running, its headlights off, facing the direction of the Albright house. The black car sat beneath the broken street lamp for 11 minutes before it finally pulled away. Isabelle woke before dawn to the sound of her father's voice, low and urgent, coming from the hallway outside her room. "Isabelle, wake up, my love. Wake up now." She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, what is it?" "We're leaving the house right now," he said, already pulling a jacket over her shoulders. "Come with me, quickly." "What happened?" she asked, her voice small. "Look at this," he said, and held up his phone. On the screen was a photograph taken from across the street of their own front door. Beneath it, a single line of text: "We know where you sleep." "We need to call the police," Isabelle said. "The police," Lucas said, and something bitter crept into his voice. "It was the police who helped bury the evidence against me. How am I supposed to trust them now?" "Then let's go to Judge Cross," Isabelle said. "He needs to know about this." Lucas looked at his daughter for a long moment, and something in her steady certainty reached him the same way it had the judge days before. "You're right," he said finally. "If a child can find enough faith to stand up to an entire courtroom, I can find enough to trust one honest man." They arrived at Judge Cross's chambers just after sunrise. Diane Lane was already there, pale, a printed page trembling slightly in her hand.
"Judge Cross," she said. "It's urgent." "Come in," he said. "We received a threat," she said, sliding the photograph across his desk. "They photographed their front door last night. They know where the Albrights live." Judge Cross studied the image for a long moment. "This confirms everything we suspected," he said quietly. "Confirms what?" Lucas asked. "Victory Corporation isn't just an investment firm," Judge Cross said. "It's a front, a money-laundering operation involving politicians, businessmen, and public officials. For years, they've diverted resources, inflated contracts, bought silence. And when someone discovers something or becomes a threat, they eliminate the problem. Sometimes literally. Other times, they do exactly what they did to you. Manufacture evidence, destroy a reputation, guarantee a conviction." "I saw something, didn't I?" Lucas said slowly, as though pulling the memory up from somewhere he'd buried it. "That's why they came after me." "What did you see?" Judge Cross asked. "A few days before my arrest," Lucas said, "I was closing out financial reports. I found discrepancies in one particular client's account, money moving in and out with no proper documentation. I thought it was a clerical error. I mentioned it to my supervisor." "And what did he say?" Judge Cross asked.
He told me it was a special client, told me not to worry about it. You touched something you weren't supposed to touch, Judge Cross said. That account was likely a shell used to launder money. The moment you asked questions, you became a liability. Then why not just fire me? Lucas asked. Because you were competent, Judge Cross said, and competent people ask more questions. They needed you gone, and more than that, they needed you discredited. If you were convicted of theft, nothing you said afterward would carry any weight at all. Diane Lane leaned forward. Your Honor, if we have this information, we could bring it to federal prosecutors. We could take down the entire organization. We could, Judge Cross said, but first we secure this family. At that moment, a clerk knocked and stepped inside, breathless. Your Honor, we have a problem. Andrew Vale has vanished. Vanished? Judge Cross repeated. Explain. He never came home last night, the clerk said. His apartment is untouched. He isn't answering calls. And we found something in his office that changes everything. At least 15 cases in the last 5 years, all following the same pattern. A competent person discovers something inconvenient, asks the wrong question, and within weeks they're facing charges they didn't earn. Evidence appears out of nowhere, Diane murmured. Witnesses go quiet or disappear. The system does the rest. Daddy, Isabelle said suddenly, the lady from the hospital, Nurse Oliver, she helped us. Is she in danger too? Judge Cross was already reaching for the phone. Paul, send a patrol car to Martha Oliver's address immediately and assign protection to the Albright family as well. Already on its way, Your Honor, came the reply. Judge Cross set the phone down and looked at Isabelle for a long moment. Isabelle, he said, you are braver than most adults I have known in my life. I just wanted to save my father, she said quietly. And you did, he said, but you did something else too. You saved me. How? She asked. Years ago, he said, I was investigating a different case involving this same organization. I had an accident that put me in a wheelchair for a time. I believed it was misfortune. Yesterday, I discovered it wasn't an accident at all. It was sabotage. The same people who came after your father tried to silence me, and I let them. I stopped asking questions. I became someone who only followed paperwork instead of the truth. Until yesterday, Isabelle said. Until yesterday, he agreed, when a little girl told me I would be able to breathe freely again if I simply did the right thing. I thought it was absurd, impossible. But something has been changing in me since that moment, and I cannot explain it with medicine or science. I only know it's real.
An officer knocked and entered quickly. Your Honor, we found Nurse Martha Oliver. She's safe, but she says 2 men tried to break into her home early this morning. She escaped through the back and hid at a neighbor's house. Bring her here, Judge Cross said, and I want maximum security on this courthouse starting now. We have enough to begin dismantling this organization, but we have to move carefully. If we show our hand too early, they will erase every trace and sacrifice whoever they need to. Andrew Vale, Diane said slowly. That's why he disappeared. They're going to make him the scapegoat. Exactly, Judge Cross said. They'll pin everything on him, claim he acted alone out of personal ambition, and the people actually responsible will walk away untouched. So what do we do? Lucas asked. We turn the game around, Judge Cross said. They believe they control the entire board, that they can sacrifice pieces whenever it suits them, but they've forgotten something important. What? Isabelle asked. The most powerful piece in chess isn't the king, Judge Cross said. It's the queen. And sometimes the queen takes the form of a courageous little girl who refuses to give up. Tomorrow, he continued, we don't just reopen your father's case. We reopen every single case on that list. We show the world exactly what these people have done,
And this time, I will not stop until every one of them faces real justice." That night, in a different part of the city, two men who had orchestrated it all sat in a private office lit only by a single desk lamp. "We found Andrew Vale," one of them said. "Where?" the other asked. "In the river," the first said. "A fisherman found the body this morning." "Suicide?" the second asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. "Officially, yes," the first said, "but the coroner found marks suggesting he was forced to write a confession letter before the end." "They killed him and staged it," the second said quietly, "eliminated the only person who could directly connect them to the scheme." "But not the only evidence," the first said. "Before he disappeared, Vale sent a scheduled email to his personal attorney. If he didn't cancel it within 24 hours, it would send automatically." "Did he cancel it?" the second asked. "No," the first said. Silence stretched between them. "Where are they now?" the second asked finally. "On their way to the courthouse," the first said. "They were summoned as witnesses in the Albright case. They have no idea what's waiting for them." "Then let's give them the show they deserve." The next morning, Isabelle sat beside her father on a hard wooden bench outside the courtroom doors, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "It's going to be all right, my love," Lucas said. "Today, it ends, I promise." "I know, Daddy," she said, "because Judge Cross is going to do the right thing, and when he does, everyone will see that sometimes miracles really do happen." Inside, Diane Lane pulled Lucas aside just before the doors opened. "Lucas, we need to talk before we go in. Paul Mendez gave me information that changes everything. We have the names of the real people responsible. We have solid evidence. But these are powerful people. A billionaire businessman, a representative with connections reaching all the way to Washington, a police chief who controls half the investigations in this city. If we make one mistake, if we leave a single gap, they escape." "What do I need to do?" Lucas asked. "Trust in Judge Cross," Diane said. "Trust in justice, and trust in what your daughter lit inside all of us. Hope." The courtroom doors opened. "This court is now session," Judge Cross said, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed room. Deep breath. "Today, we are not here only to review the case of Lucas Albright. We are here to expose a network of corruption that has destroyed lives, manipulated justice, and stained the very system I swore to protect." A murmur rippled through the gallery.
"I call to the stand Maurice Brandt, Chief Executive of Victory Corporation," Judge Cross said. A tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit rose and walked forward, adjusting his cufflinks. "Your Honor, I'm here to cooperate fully with whatever is required. My company has always operated within the law. Always." "Then explain the multi-million-dollar transfers to phantom accounts in offshore tax havens," Judge Cross said. "Explain the payments to Prosecutor Andrew Vale, found dead in the river yesterday morning. Explain the inflated contracts issued to companies that do not exist." "I have no idea what you're referring to," Brandt said. "If there were irregularities, they occurred without my knowledge." "This is your personal email account," Judge Cross said, holding up a printed page. "Your digital signature, your instructions to fabricate evidence against an innocent man." "That could have been falsified, hacked," Brandt said, his composure cracking slightly. "It could have been," Judge Cross agreed, "but it wasn't." He turned to a second man seated in the gallery. "I call forward Representative Sergio Castellano." A well-dressed man stood slowly, his jaw tight. "Representative, you sponsored 3 separate bills in recent years that directly benefited Victory Corporation: tax reductions, relaxed oversight, protection from audits. In exchange, you received campaign contributions totaling millions of dollars. Legal donations," Castellano said stiffly, "within the limits allowed by election law."
Donations from phantom companies created solely to launder the money you were being paid, Judge Cross said, and when irregularities began to surface, you used your influence to quietly bury the investigations. Finally, Judge Cross turned toward the back of the room. I call forward Chief Oliver Mendoza. A uniformed officer near the exit stiffened, then slowly walked forward. Chief, 15 cases, Judge Cross said. 15 innocent people framed for crimes they did not commit, all under your supervision. Evidence planted, witnesses silenced, investigations directed, all to protect the interests of Victory Corporation and eliminate anyone who dared to ask a question. Prove it, Mendoza said through clenched teeth. These are allegations, coincidences. You don't have proof of anything. We have Prosecutor Andrew Vale's testimony, Diane Lane said, stepping forward, recorded before he was murdered. A murmur of shock swept the courtroom. Bring in the witnesses, Judge Cross said. A woman stepped forward first, her voice shaking but clear. My name is Teresa Foster. I was an accountant at Victory Corporation. I found discrepancies and reported them. 1 week later, I was accused of embezzlement. I lost my job, my reputation, my family. I spent 2 years in prison for a crime I did not commit. A second man followed. Richard Nevins, investigative journalist. I was preparing a report on suspicious contracts when I was accused of slander. My career ended before it truly began. You cannot prove any of this in a courtroom, Brandt snapped. These are just stories. We also have a video, Judge Cross said quietly, recorded by Andrew Vale before he disappeared and sent automatically to his personal attorney when he failed to cancel it. The room fell utterly silent as the recording began to play. My name is Andrew Vale, the voice said, tired and afraid. If you're watching this, it means I couldn't escape them. It means they found me. But before I go, I need the truth to survive. I did terrible things. I destroyed innocent lives. I did it because I was afraid of them. And now that same fear is going to be the end of me. Don't make my mistake. Don't let fear win over truth. You will answer for every crime, every life you destroyed, every tear shed by people who only wanted to do what was right. Drop it, someone shouted near the exit. Security, move in. It's just a flash drive, Mendoza barked, backing toward the doors. Hold your position. You think it's only the 3 of us? Brandt shouted, his composure finally shattering completely. This goes far beyond this room. Judges, prosecutors, politicians, businessmen, everyone is part of this. If we fall, we take everyone with us. Security closed in from every side, and within moments all 3 men were in restraints. Daddy, Isabelle whispered from her seat. He did it. He really did it. Judge Cross rose slowly from his bench, and for the first time in the entire trial, the courtroom noticed something different about the way he stood, taller, steadier, as though some invisible weight had finally lifted.
Years ago, he began, I lost the use of my legs, but I lost something far worse than that. I lost the ability to believe in justice, in truth, in goodness. A child challenged me in this very room. She told me I would breathe freely again if I simply did what was right. At the time, I thought it was an impossible, naive hope from someone too young to understand how the world truly works. He paused. But she was right, he said. Not about magic, not about miracles the way we imagine them. She was right about something far deeper. When we choose what is right over what is easy, when we choose truth over convenience, something in us begins to heal. Something wakes up. He looked directly at Isabelle. Every hour since that day, I have felt strength returning to me that I thought was gone forever, he said. Doctors would call it impossible. Science would call it impossible. And yet, here I am." He turned back to the three men in restraints. "You built an empire on other people's suffering," he said. "You destroyed families, ruined lives, stained the very system meant to protect the innocent. And you believed you were untouchable, that no consequence could ever reach you. But every injustice, sooner or later, finds its reckoning, and today is that day." "Maurice Brandt, Sergio Castellano, and Oliver Mendoza," he continued, "you are formally charged with criminal conspiracy, corruption, procedural fraud, and as the masterminds behind the murder of Andrew Vale. You will be taken into custody immediately, and you will answer for every single crime." "You won't get away with this," Mendoza shouted as he was dragged toward the door. "This is a mistake. You'll regret this." Judge Cross didn't respond. He simply watched them go, his breathing calm, even, effortless. "For each of you who suffered because of this organization," he said, turning to the courtroom, "the state offers not only a formal apology, but full compensation. Your names will be cleared, your records erased. Every day spent unjustly imprisoned will be accounted for." "Lucas Albright, approach the bench," he said. Lucas walked forward slowly, Isabelle's hand still in his. "Mr. Albright," Judge Cross said, "in the name of this court, I ask your forgiveness for not listening from the very beginning, for nearly allowing an innocent man to be convicted, for letting this system fail you and your daughter so completely." He looked down at Isabelle. "Thank you for having a daughter who reminded me of something I had forgotten, that justice is not simply the application of rules. It is the pursuit of truth, the protection of the innocent, the courage to question something when it is wrong." "I just wanted you to do what was right," Isabelle said softly, "because when we do what is right, good things happen, even things that seem impossible." "You were right," he said, "far more right than you could have known." He straightened, addressing the entire courtroom once more. "For her extraordinary courage, for her unwavering faith, and for being the spark that reignited justice in this courtroom when it was very nearly extinguished," he said, "I hereby award Isabelle Albright the Medal of Civic Merit, the highest honor this court can bestow." The gallery rose in applause, and somewhere in the sound of it, Judge Cross drew one long, full, effortless breath and did not reach for the inhaler resting untouched on the corner of his bench. "This case has taught us something fundamental," he said, once the room had quieted. "Justice is carried out by people, and people can fail, can be corrupted, can look away when looking away is easier. But people can also stand back up, can question, can fight. Let this story serve as a lesson," he continued, "for the powerful who believe themselves above the law. You are not. For the innocent who suffer injustice, do not give up, because the truth always finds a way through. And for the rest of us, never underestimate the power of one courageous person who simply refuses to accept wrong as normal. Case closed," he said, and struck the gavel one final time. Outside the courthouse that evening, Isabelle sat on the steps beside her father, watching the sun go down over a city that felt different somehow than it had that morning. "Daddy," she said quietly, "do you think he'll keep breathing okay now?" Lucas looked down at his daughter and smiled, the first easy smile she had seen on his face in months. "I think," he said, "some people just needed someone brave enough to remind them how."